Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Kinsella. I'm the founder and CEO of LUWI. Welcome to our fourth episode of Learn with LUWI. This is really fun for us. We're so happy you're here. So Sam and Marissa, Team LUWI, and we are joined, of course, by our fabulous guest, Charis Denison. So my goal is to share a little bit about LUWI. I've got just a couple of slides, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sam to give a little mini demo, a how-to demo, and then we'll get started with Charis. I'll give a little intro, and then we can get started with our chat. So that's the plan. This is for you. So please give us, in the chat, any questions or raise your hand or whatever, because we want to be able to answer any questions you have.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So let me share my screen. Okay, you guys can see my screen. Awesome. Okay, well, if you're here, you probably know that LUWI stands for Let Us Wear It, and it is a new hormone-free, latex-free, STI-preventing contraceptive designed for women that men prefer to condoms. We are on track to launch Q3 of 2025, so we're not yet available. Essentially, LUWI is a finer liner for the inside, although it can be put on a penis to be put on the inside. So it's very versatile. It is not a condom. Of course, a condom, everybody knows, is a tight-fitting cover. And we created this so that women and other receivers could have agency, could be able to be in charge of their health and well-being, and to be able to have an option for STI prevention and hormone-free contraception, because the problem is there aren't any for anyone other than penis owners, right? It's a 100-year-old industry, basically, condoms. There are over 180 on the market. They're all pretty much the same. I mean, some glow in the dark, some are flavored, but really there's not a lot of innovation there. And yet CVS, Target, Walgreens, everybody's got an option, right? Everybody's got a health equity option. And this is the only category where there isn't an option for the other half of the population. So that's really been our motivator, to be able to create this new, better choice that feels better. It's easy to use. As I mentioned earlier, it's very versatile. So it can be put in the vagina, in the anal canal, or on a penis. It does create this ultra thin barrier that transfers heat, that protects against all STIs and protects against pregnancy. There is no unrolling needed. So a lot of folks that have tried this have said that it eliminates that awkward moment. It can be put on with one hand, in or on with one hand. So it's very easy. And it is equally effective as a condom. So when we look at this market and we figure out what are the top options that are available, we really see that, they're not really checking all the boxes, right? I mean, the pill and IUD, those are hormone-based, and we know that folks are choosing to move away from hormonal side effects. But of course, those don't protect against STIs, and STIs, also sometimes known as STDs, are crazy bad. And we've got to do something, right? And we know that condoms don't particularly feel good. And of course, the biggest issue is that condoms require women to rely on another, to outsource their body's health and well-being. And, it's almost 2025, so that just doesn't make sense. So LUWI checks all the boxes. We have had a lot of experience on college campuses with our first target market, Gen Z, and it is overwhelming. Everybody wants a new modern option that they can control. Of course, we know when you are in charge of your health and well-being, and you're able to make a decision for yourself, you're happier, right? That leads to greater pleasure. And that's what this is all about. So at the end of the day, LUWI exists to provide protection that feels better, right? It's just as simple as that. And to be able to provide a health equity option, over the counter, easily accessible, and to enable agency. and body autonomy, because that just feels so much better. So connect with us. You can find us on all the channels. If you do want LUWI to come to your campus and you're not sure if it's on our list already, shoot us a note, hello@getluwi.com. Join our newsletter to be the first to know when LUWI's available. If you know someone that you think should be a launch partner of ours, we have 65 to date. These are folks that we're going to be sampling through. Let us know. We'd like to add them to our potential launch partner list. Okay. Sam.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to do a quick demo of LUWI with our very in-demand sparkle vulva. Can everyone see this?
Love it.
Thank you, Charis. You can see the clitoris here, the labia minora, the labia majora, and of course the vagina. So this is LUWI, and it can be just pushed in a little bit with a finger and then guided in the rest of the way with a penis or toy, or just completely put onto the penis or toy and then inserted like that. So the great part about this is that you have this additional surface area of skin being protected from STIs such as HSV1, HSV2, and HPV, where condoms are not protecting this additional surface area. So you're getting this extra layer of protection for STIs with LUWI. And what I always like to say my favorite part is that when you're ready for cleanup, you can just twist it and pinch LUWI and pull it out. So cleanup is my favorite feature of LUWI. So I'm gonna let you guys get to it.
I love that.
Just a reminder for all the attendees, please use the chat and the Q&A feature, and me and Marissa will be monitoring that while Lisa and Charis get to it. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Okay, so I'm going to do a little intro, Charis. So Charis Denison is a nationally recognized youth advocate, human development, and ethics expert with over 2 decades of experience working with parents. Now. 3. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's great.
I'm about to be sexy.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, over 3 decades of experience. I am continually impressed by Charis's knowledge and her delivery. I am raising 2 Gen Zs, as well as obviously leading LUWI, and our first target market is Gen Zs. And we've known each other a long time. And Charis's method, her impact, her way has been highlighted in Peggy Orenstein, New York Times bestselling author, in several of her books. And Charis lives in Marin. We're going to be in San Francisco, very close to Marin, in mid-January. So we hope to see you there. She has 2 Gen Zs of her own, and she spends her time talking with 8 to 24-year-olds and their parents at high schools, boarding schools, events, colleges, universities, nationally. And this is my favorite. Charis says her whole job is to help young adults make as many decisions that end in joy and honor versus guilt and shame and regret. So thank you so much for coming back to be with us again, Charis.
No, I love it. It's so great. And I really want to remind listeners also that I teach high school and college and middle school here and there, even kindergartners sometimes. So I like to be interrupted. I really, I like the discourse. So please feel free to, people are listening in the chat, and just, I'm very comfortable being interrupted or any organized anarchy at all. If people decide they want the conversation to go a different way.
Yeah, that sounds great. I totally agree. Totally agree. Please. So we had such an awesome time last time you were here. And I thought, covered so much. And I was in the room, right? And I still listened to the recording 3 times afterwards. Charis, you're that good. And so what I thought I would do is kind of take what we thought were the top 5 key takeaways and learning from that time, and then going to reiterate, and then you can riff on those. And then we'll go into today's topic, which is enabling our teens and young adults to feel more safe, seen, and significant. So we'll get to that. I know that's a big foundation for your work, Charis. So
Absolutely.
So let's see. The first one, you can finish this sentence. This is a quote from Charis the last time. She said, "Our culture has made sex everywhere and nowhere." And that means,
It's I love that you remember that I actually took quotes on what you and Sam said, because you both had some amazing gems. But yeah, I mean, what's really challenging now, and because of being a dinosaur in this field, a lot of the topics that used to apply to college students have trickled down to high school to middle, and now elementary school students are hearing language that has to do with sex or sexuality. And so I am not one of those people that says you're supposed to immediately talk about sex with your child, and you are the expert of your own child. So and we talked about this before, that they have heard some reference to sex way before you've decided to talk about it. Most of us anyway. So it's everywhere, but it is marketed, and it is, pops up at them. And so my curriculum is about not how to maintain your GPA of when you know what to expect, but how do you handle the unexpected, right? How do you handle discomfort or ambiguity or something when you're not ready for it, and surprises? And sexuality is on billboards. It's on, pop-ups when your child is in elementary school and trying to research something that a letter might be wrong, and there's porn. Like, there is messages of sexuality. As far as my curriculum is, how do you stay the subject of your own story? And the amazing thing about sexuality is it is exactly the place where you can be the subject of your story, and our culture has made it a situation where you become the object, like a dozen times a day, where all of a sudden you have these images or these messages around sex. So that's what I mean by everywhere and nowhere. What I think is so interesting is since we had the webinar, I keep track of quotes of whatever my students say in classrooms or workshops or one-on-one stuff. And I had a quote, who was it from? It was from a 14-year-old female identifying person who, how did she say what? I wrote it down. She said, "Oh, it is amazing that my mother is everywhere and nowhere all at the same time," which I think that we mirror this. It's like that we hover, and then we don't talk about what really matters, but then it's just like my children call my fallback, which is a term we use in my curriculum, of how do you handle, what's your go-to when you're uncomfortable, and how do you revise that when it really matters. My children, one of my fallbacks is inflicting care, which is a great term on their part. They came up with it, but it is this idea that I am very present, but sometimes I'm not effective. And so, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think also this everywhere and nowhere kind of thing is we have to talk about it.
Yes.
Because if, like, as you said last time, if we're not talking about it with our kids, whether they're, 8 or 24, somebody else is. There are images everywhere that are swirling in their minds. And our job is to make that as easy and comfortable and like it's a bag of chips, right? So that it's open for them. Yeah.
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 And when they name it, which is the biggest thing, which touches on this idea of feeling safe, is our job as adults in whether you're a mentor or a parent or a teacher or whatever you are, a coach, is you keep the connection. You figure out your relationship with that particular young person, and how do I keep a connection at all costs? And so I think that's the trick, is if your child or your player on the field or someone else's child that happens to be in your car mentions something about sex, it's not your job to take on this whole thing. It's the connection, is that you validate them for saying out loud something about sexuality, because it's all, like we said, everywhere and nowhere. Like it's always,
and that brings us to the second key takeaway, which is just answer the one question.
Exactly. Or even
it doesn't have to be the floodgates
No,
of,
not,
if they
yeah.
say one thing, we can just answer that one thing.
And you came up with a great example last time, Lisa, where someone had a question where like, what if it's not my own child? Like,
Yeah.
is it my job do I even answer that question? Maybe that parent, but what you do is you validate them asking the question like, wow, that's a great question. Or you're like, oh,
Mm, mm.
you know what? A lot of people hear that these days. And, sometimes what's out there, the information isn't correct, or like, it's just, you don't pretend the child didn't say anything, but then you can decide how much information do I give in this, depending upon if it's your child or not. But this idea that if we're pretending that sex isn't being talked about all the time, like kids are reciting phrases and
Yeah.
terms from porn before they even have thought about
Know what it means.
kissing somebody, or even holding hands. So we can't ignore that. But we also have to be really careful, because shame and regret are really tied in to the idea of sexuality, when really your product and the idea of what your product represents is that not only is it agency, but it's pleasure focused. Like, geez, to not be on the receiving end or the object of this, or performative, or it's just like, so yeah, I love the idea of just of keeping connection, that, that if your
And
child mentions anything about sex, it's the same as if they mention anything else. Acknowledge that they said it,
yeah,
that they're curious.
and just that, and acknowledge that one thing. And you don't have to go into this diatribe of, oh, and then this and this, but giving them that acknowledgement, I think you said last time, opens the door for them to come back. And they
Because
will come back, because now it's easy.
yeah,
Oh,
well,
that was
they
simple.
won't come back if you do go the other way, where you
Mm.
this onslaught of like, I'm so glad you brought this up, because I have this, like, I have a vulva puppet right here, and I'm just going to
Let
hand
me
it to
show
you and have
you.
you point out all the different places, like, but
So,
I can
no.
tell you that if they know there is a vulva puppet on their fourth or fifth question, they might come up to you and say, like, I have many 12th grade boys about to go to college, like, could you bust out that vulva puppet again that you
Yeah.
mentioned, like,
Yeah.
last year? Like, so yeah, you honor the question, and you answer that one question, because you are now on emotional probation. You're on trial. They want to know, are they going to answer just that one question?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
if you literally just do that, or they say, oh, you know what? Someone just said that people are giving like oral sex in the bathrooms. You know what your response is? It's, huh. Done.
Want some gum?
Want some gum?
Yeah, yeah,
Are you
yeah.
hungry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
know.
we've
And
talked about
that
this
other
before.
thing, yeah. And the third one of the third one that ties right into this is, you had said, and I have been working on this. I think maybe everybody that was on that last one was working on this. No exclamation points, because the tendency is to raise the eyebrows and be like, "Oh my God!" And no, that's, yeah, like
No, and you
exclamation
also don't want
points.
to join them. You don't want to insult them by like, oh, can you believe that? Like, no, you don't get to do that. They are supposed to be allowed to do that. And if they say,
Mm,
I can't believe that, your response, huh? It's really hard, because it's not like, we haven't had a sex life in the past, but it's not about us. And so,
yeah.
the idea is it's just the connection, and the 3-to-1 rule. For every 3 minutes they talk, you talk for one. Or if they're
3 to 1.
a
Okay.
1 minute person, for every 1 minute you talk for 30 seconds. And if you've got, a male identifying child that is going through a period where he's trying to define his own agency, and he only makes a grunt, you make half a grunt. But you're like, I'm still
Okay.
your person. There's a space for you here. That's what I'm here for. And then they sit there and they wait for you to give this big, long, like, lesson or so. And when you don't do it, they literally, you can watch their face. It's like utter bafflement. They're like, wait, what? And then they'll come back. Or if you have someone who isn't talking a lot, you're just in the same, part of the house at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And, your kid all of a sudden decides at 4 o'clock they might be hungry. and they just know that you're in that one spot, but you're not there.
Yeah.
But they don't know that. You're just sitting there doing your own stuff, and your child knows that that's where you are, that you're just there. And they might be, as they're grabbing a sandwich, be like, oh, you know what, my friend has this situation that they're going through.
Yeah. Wait, okay, before I move on, there's a question. Tim, Nora?
Yes, there is a hand raise. Can I
I
let
love the hand
Nora?
raised.
Yeah,
Okay,
go.
perfect. Nora, go for it.
Hey, first of all, thank you for this invitation. I know that Katie, my colleague, is also here, so I'm so excited for that because it's not the same talking to her about LUWI as it is, seeing this presentation. But I just, coming from a Mexican, very, very, you don't talk about sex, you don't talk about anything, right? You don't even talk about periods. So you grow up with all these traumas and stigmas, and now that I'm a mother, you have no idea how stressful this has been. And so listening to you, taking the notes, acknowledging, validating, but more importantly, I feel so empowered that at 3 years old, my daughter tells me she feels safe. And that alone is a strong foundation to know that she's going to have what I never had. I had a physical parent, but never emotionally. It was just physically. There was no connection to this day. And so thank you for I guess for just validating that I'm not doing so bad.
Yeah.
As a
You know, and
parent.
I think, and your name is Nora?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Nora, first of all, like what I'm about to say to you is what I encourage you to say to your daughter, is that it takes so much courage to name that. Like that's all our kids. What we really need our kids to do is, especially around this topic. And I've said this many times before, that I didn't dream of being a sex educator when I was young. But I just adore this age group. And when things are confusing, there needs to be a safe place for them to name that. And naming it is the hardest part, because there isn't a lot of place where you're validated for doing so. So for you to actually say on this webinar, that you acknowledge that your daughter said that to you, and for you to say you're not doing that badly. Are you kidding? Like you are an expert of your child, and I just am like bowing down to you right now. And but the idea of also letting her know how brave it is to name that she feels safe, like that takes a lot of courage, because what you're doing in just saying that to her is you're like, I hear you, I'm still your safe container. And the fact that you said that, you're building her own agency and her own language. You don't have to be talking about sex. And I had the pleasure of working on a project in Denver around a lot of Mexican Americans. Everyone changes how they want to say Latinx, Latin American, everything changed even throughout the project. But there were so many amazing parents and grandparents who were raising young people who were talking about this cultural, and I'm not saying it's your experience, Nora, but there's just so many in this where you don't talk about it, and you say, I don't want you to ever have sex, but if you have sex, we'll help you raise your child. Like there's a lot of cultural stuff that's so hard. It's a setup in a lot of ways. Some families have no problem with that, but others, they do. And the courage when you have one background that you were raised with your own parents, and you're changing the narrative, it's beautiful. So Nora,
It is.
I'd like to say something also. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes. It's almost poetic what you're saying, but no, yes, I do agree with the people that that you work with, and not only that, but also I think in our culture we also see that sex is everywhere, or but it's not, in the sense
Exactly.
that in the Mexican culture we tend to sexualize a lot of things, maybe calling out, catcalling a woman, or calling, so sexual innuendo and sexual is everywhere, right? But when it comes to the real education and the real, foundation of autonomy, we don't want to talk about it. But then we joke, we make jokes, we teach our kids how to, how to call different names, and so it's there, but it's not. So
Yes. I love
yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And what
Excellent.
you're adding is it's so important to the conversation, because we can't just focus on, I mean, the main narrative is it's so cisgender, white. It's because it's sex right now is just, it's a business, especially in the United States. And so to give a voice to so many of my students that aren't seen or heard or feel safe. I mean, what an incredible role model you are as a mom. Like that's
oh well,
Yeah,
I
that's
amazing.
think
awesome.
I
Keep it
think
up.
you're too kind, but also Katie and I are
Oh.
both health educators, sexual health educators.
Mm.
Oh,
So we work with a very dynamic community that has many barriers. And so some of the things that we do is talk with teens who come in for STDs, or or have questions, or even how to put on a condom. You'd be surprised how many people even at our age don't know how to put a condom on.
yep.
But we encourage, especially when we have, a parent or parents that are comfortable and open to communication about sexuality. I mean, that to me is if I can get the parent and the child at the same time and have a real discussion, and acknowledging the parent and saying, no, it's better to have that information from you than the friend or TikTok, or you guys can come here and we can talk about it. So I think that it really is about teaching parents too that it's okay to talk about it, because you're
Yeah,
going to talk
and
about it if you get pregnant.
right. And I think this follows to the next one of the key takeaways from the last time that Charis loves, and I think you could use this too, Nora, this the value of the non-question question, right? That like you're not requiring a response, but it's sort of a question like, oh, I wonder how hard that must be for you.
Yes.
Yeah. The power of wondering is really, really great, because again, my whole foundation of the curriculum that, and teens teach with me, and college students after they've been through my program, if it really resonates, is that idea of feeling safe, seen, and significant. That the overarching name of my curriculum is resisting the setup, because our culture, it does set up our young people to seek ways to feel safe, seen, and significant that don't actually serve them. And that's on us. It's not on them. And so that idea of wondering is so great, because you're not handing them a question that pushes them into reacting rather than responding. And so you wonder because you're acknowledging that you see them and that they're there. And I think it's just the power of that. They're just so starving to be able to be seen for that whole. And I appreciate the work that you're doing, Nora, because it's yeah, it's hard. And I also think Nora brings up a really great point, just to close on that one, is that it doesn't have to be us. Like especially, and as we know, like in child psychology, children, the natural course is that when a child is young and, in elementary school, when they have a problem, they go to their parent first, and then their teacher, and then a friend. And then right around middle school, it starts to switch. When they individuate, when they have a problem, they go to a peer first, and then a teacher, and then their parent. That's not always the case. We all all of us have different dynamics in our family, but that is a normal course of them trying to individuate. And so if you can, when you're younger, when your child is younger, if you can figure out your cultural situation, your, you know, your genetics, like, do you have addiction in your family? Do you have anxiety? Do you whatever? But when I had my children, I just tried to find as many people young. I tried to go from young all the way to, you know, older, that reflected the values of my partner and myself. And how do you put them in place? And then now it doesn't have to be you if it's for, because you can be an incredible source of comfort for them. You don't have to be the one person that talks about many specifics around sexuality or drugs and alcohol per se, but there are an incredible, and I have a wealth of great groups, like, you know, female identifying support groups, like, you know, I'm from Marin, but Love Our Nature is this incredible group that we teach a lot together in schools. We partner up, and they run amazing female identifying groups where it's another place for families to have a place for their female identifying students to go. There are great male identifying, there are great trans, there are great questioning groups. I just think as many places as we can put out there, because as we talked about last time, that Lisa mentioned the condom aisle. Okay, that's what just needs to change, is there needs to be this idea of feeling safe, meaning connection. We're the most powerful connection for our children, but around the time that they're teenagers, they need to seek other places that become the most powerful. And we want to have a little control over, maybe some control over what those people look like that they're hanging out with, because the messages they're getting around their identity and what they're seeking information from is not this idea that the condom aisle is contraceptive or family planning.
Yeah.
which
Well,
is
I mean, I
hilarious.
think that's a lot of why, I mean, over this course of doing this work with LUWI and Team LUWI, you know, a lot of this is not actually about sex.
No,
It's
absolutely.
about intimate justice. It's about agency. It's about
Yeah.
making decisions that end in joy and honor. It is about feeling
Right.
safe and seen and significant. And the tangible aspect of all of that is this condom aisle. It is absolutely a travesty that we've got, you know, 180 for men, and then what do we've got? What do we have over here? You know, 7 different yeast infection medicines. We just need an option over there on this other side that is for the other half of the population, for this intimate justice, for this ability to just understand, hey, I've got an option. I'm important. My health needs are significant. I'm seen, right? And I feel like a lot of times we focus on the sexual aspect of it, but really it's before that.
And no, it's way, and exactly, that's what I talk about, that I am a sex educator, and what I teach really has nothing to do with sex. I mean, sex is
Yeah.
a small part of it, of course, but you know, and you talk about yeast medication, but it's also Plan B, and our boys are also treated as objects, you know, like they have, I don't know if we talked about it last time, but what's heartbreaking is that there's a product, I don't have my box with me, but I have a box that's a makeup box of like tiers of, like, it opens up like a fancy Sephora box, but it's all sexuality information and drug and alcohol stuff. And but there are products for boys that it's just lidocaine that they spray on their penis so that they last longer, right? So again, so they feel nothing. It just numbs them. Again, treating boys as objects of their own story, but then they're expected to run the narrative because it's still this patriarchy. And so it's just like the whole thing, it isn't about sex. And yeah, we need to show up for our kids. Because
Yeah.
it could be, I mean, this could be so great. And it's not, yeah, we need to let it be great. Sam,
So,
you
okay.
say smart things. Sam, you say something smart because you're always smart in these things. What do you think?
Charis, you are so, so sweet. I was about to jump in with
Well,
a
I'm not sweet.
question.
That's what's so cool. I'm not sweet at all. I'm just real. So tell me what you think.
I there was just so much to cover there. Like, I don't even know where to start about which part.
Oh, yes, you do.
Well,
Okay, start with feel. Remember, don't start with think. Feel, think, want. Like, what are you feeling?
I feel that there is a lot that comes before sex. Having education and knowledge about your body is what provides autonomy, having the words to describe it. Something that I would love to chat more about is we were talking last time about, I forget exactly how you had worded it, but it was about like you go into an exam prepared, thinking
Right.
about what the book is. You read the book, you know what to
Yep.
do.
Yep.
But what when a child is going to a party, like actually thinking about ahead of time, like what am I comfortable with happening here? And what am I
Yep.
going to say if I become uncomfortable or if I change my mind? Like if
To
you're not the
pre-live
person,
that.
yeah, like if you're not the person who is necessarily talking about sex exactly with your child during those teenage years, like
Yeah.
how do you, Karis, how would you encourage them
Yeah.
to think about that, to
Right.
prompt them to do that ahead of time before you drop them off at the party?
Well, and that's what's so great about the work that I've been doing recently. You know, my best friend, she's been in education forever too, but she teaches like literally like newborns to like 7 or 8 year olds, and they're terrifying to me. So we always laugh. Like she wants me to come help in her homeschool, and I'm like, they scare me. I don't know what to do. And she's like, you're dealing with like drug addicts and praying, like, why are you scared? So, but it's a different skill set, right? But what I love teaching, and now I'm teaching in a lot of elementary schools, because it doesn't have to, if you can start having these conversations with your child when they're going to that party, it's the same language. It is like, it's this idea of like, oh, you're going to a birthday party or a play date. What's happened in the past that's made you uncomfortable? Like, because that's the stuff they don't get prepared for teacher, but you're having a spelling test on Thursday, or we're going to write about this book where they know what to expect. But our kids, the setup is they aren't given opportunities to practice what do they do when they walk into situations that are uncomfortable or unpredictable. If they start to, like we say, name it to change it. If you start naming, oh, the last couple of times I went to a party, I saw these two things happen and they made me uncomfortable. Okay. I mean, honestly, if you were in a
Just
classroom,
to think about that,
Yeah,
allows you to
would be
experience
required.
it. Yeah. To
You'd be
be, and
required
that
to
develops
reflect and
more.
Nora's
decide.
hands,
Oh, go ahead, Nora. Come back, Nora.
Nora's hands raised, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
let her go ahead, Nora.
Thank you. I feel like I'm taking all this space, but
Go.
I'm just, it's like Christmas.
We are so
all
happy to
over
have you here.
Yep.
But one of the things was, even before, as a you know, as an older parent, was this whole idea of becoming a parent just freaked me out, right? But
Yeah.
I started to buy books for my daughter even before she was, you know, even before I had her. And one of the things that I'm teaching her, and it was thanks to a book, was the circle of safety. So it doesn't teach them to the nice person, or don't go to the, you know, the person that looks this way, but it teaches them it's not safe if your heart is beating fast, if you're sweating, if you're scared. That doesn't mean you're safe. So it's teaching my daughter not just the, you know, maybe the physical signs to look for when she's not feeling safe, but also listening to her body, you know. And I think that's so important to teach. You know, your body doesn't lie to you. You know, when you're having, you know, that moment of doubt of, okay, this doesn't feel okay. So thank you so much for all of this. Oh my goodness.
Well, no, but Nora, what you just said is like spot on, and that's what I'm trying, and it sounds like the work you're doing as well is if we can just put into schools. And as I said before, I started out as an English teacher, and I could have stayed one, and the impact, it doesn't matter, because I was just graduating kids with higher and higher GPAs that still didn't have the navigational skills to feel the agency of, they might be great writers, but they felt, you know, they did not feel agency. And so what you brought up is exactly what's so important. And it's what LUWI represents, is what I'm talking about is young children from kindergarten all the way through graduate school, is naming your fallback. Can you find a pattern of what you do when you are uncomfortable or surprised? name it. Once you name it, it goes, I teach neurobiology as well. So it goes from, this is what I tend to do when I, like, flight, freeze, the whole idea of this primal response of, once you name it, it now moves to this part of the brain the next time that same behavior happens. So you are now gaining power. So you name it to change it. What's great is that I can have kindergartners, and by second or third grade, they are already on it. They already know their fallback. And so that will serve them by the time they get to middle school, when sexuality or drugs and alcohol, they already know that they're myelinating their brain of their response, being like, oh, I go quiet, or I try to please people when I'm uncomfortable. But now I've worked on it. So then when things go in where somebody's hand is on your leg and you're super uncomfortable, your brain is already like, oh, this is familiar. I know what I know what to do in this situation. But Nora's example is, when I teach self-defense as well, but my physical part doesn't come until the very end of a 3-day workshop. And so I had the most beautiful experience with this young woman who I started working with her in 8th grade. She was a rising 9th grader, and she was sexually assaulted at a beach the summer of her 8th grade year going into 9th grade. So she started a new high school. She was in San Francisco. She had to take 2 buses to get to school, right? So I'm shortening this story for a bit, but I think it will resonate with so many people, and it gives me goosebumps to this day. And so I started working with her one-on-one. I'd never had her in my classroom yet. So we met for the first time after her sexual assault, and she was, as she would define, a virgin. She'd never had intercourse, so this was a pretty traumatizing experience for her. And she, her parents signed her up for a self-defense class, like one of those, like, the male identifying people dress up with these big costumes. You're supposed to beat the crap out of them with a bat, and you're supposed to yell no, and like learn how to like poke their eyeballs out with your finger. Like, it's just like, God. But this particular young woman, her fallback, which in part serves her, is when she's uncomfortable, she just listens and watches. She's an observer, right? So that can be her, that's not something she should be ashamed of. So we named it, we worked on it, we revised it. And she every time got on the same bus to go to school, and she had this one man who would always push right up against her on the bus. So he'd be right up against her. And a lot of us have had this experience where it was just close enough where if she called it out, which she wouldn't, because her fallback is to just watch and pay attention. If she had, he could have easily said, what are you talking about? It's a bumpy road. I just accidentally bumped into you, right? So Nora's point is, my curriculum is feel, think, act. Do not think first, because you are thinking what your culture is giving to you. Feel first. Your gut is ew. So your 4.0 is not going to serve you in a moment like that. You're going to be thinking, oh, I don't want to make this person mad. Or, oh, this culture, like, you go to the ew. And she started just naming the ew. And I started saying, so don't start with poking his eyes out with your index finger. Just name it. So she started doing that. And every day he would do it, and she would go quiet in her head, and she would just do the feel, think, out. I feel my stomach feels really uncomfortable. I feel my face getting hot. That's the feel part. I think he's messing with me. And right now I'm not going to do anything. But in doing that, she named it. She named it. And her brain now heard her name it. So each time that happened, I told her, your brain is going to get tired of being objectified. But what this
you developed in that process, you
Yeah.
developed her sense of self, and she became
It's
more
developing
powerful.
her own agency. And that's why you develop this product, Lisa, is just this, it's this beginning of showing up, and that there is a place, because there hasn't been a place before. And so the most amazing thing happened where this one day she just was like, I'm not making enough progress. And I just said, trust the process. Like, the problem with chemistry is, like, the only reason you don't like pass chemistry by like not blowing something up, like it's all like the worst thing happening. And as long as you don't have something terrible happen, you pass the class. Like, this way, you just need to go gradually, just take care of yourself in pieces. And so this one day, She just used her own fallback to her own superpower, where she names things and she observes. And you know what she did? It was incredible. And she was one of those kids that when I talked to her, you had to lean way over. Like, you know, those people that talk like this, like, you know, and it's just like Sam talks about how she feels obligated to use exclamation points. Other women, other young girls feel obligated to whisper. And so I would have to lean way over. So she calls me from a bus stop and she is like yelling, like she sounds like she's on crack. She's just like, Charis, you won't believe what just happened on the bus. And what happened was this same man got on the bus and he stood behind her and she just did the feel think act. And he was bumping up against her and she was like, I feel hot. She did the feel, I feel hot. I feel nauseous, feel my face getting hot. I know he's messing with me. There's the thing. And then the act was, I can't get off this bus one more time and go back to my house and do what we talk about in my curriculum of lie in bed and be like, the regret. I wish I'd said this. I wish I'd done that. Like, why didn't I? Which goes to shame. She's like, I just need to get off the bus having done something. And you know what she did? Her brain did it. It's so amazing. It makes me, whoa, see, it really gets me every time. She just looked down and he had put his hand like right up against her leg, like barely touching so that every bump, it like barely hit the outside of her leg. And you know what she did? She leaned down and she looked at her own leg and she said quietly, because she knew he was listening, she whispered, that's mine. She just said, that's mine.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And 2 seconds, he stepped back, he was gone. And she was like, she wanted to get back on the bus. And I was like, no, that's enough for today. And she was on fire. And like she, you know, she didn't make the varsity track team the next week. She didn't care. She was
Yeah.
I am.
She became more powerful. And I think that is a big aspect too. When you're, you know, what happens, these underlying emotions, they drive our behavior. And sometimes we don't know. And I feel like that's another reason why just having LUWI, just knowing that LUWI exists, knowing there's an option, that creates an underlying emotion of, oh, I've got something. I could use that. I could be powerful. I could have that agency. And just that underlying emotion alone is enough to change behavior.
And it's not just an emotion, Lisa. It's a like whether they choose to use it or not. They're being, and my whole thing is they're feeling safe, meaning they have connection.
Yeah.
They're feeling seen, meaning that they are recognized, and they're feeling significant, which means they're being given power. And that's what LUWI is saying to them, because there is so little evidence of that for them.
Charis, there's a question in the chat. It is, does Charis have a book? Where has she been all of my life?
No.
Oh, yes, Charis. She's working on it. Come on, let's cheer Charis on. She's working on it.
Thank you, everybody. You know, it's so hard. I love whoever you are. I would like to marry you. I don't care what you, but yeah, I took a sabbatical right before COVID to write a book because the teens have begged me to write it. And then when Peggy Orenstein, she shadowed me for 2 years as a journalist, which is phenomenal as far as research if you're going to shadow someone to put in a book. And she's just an incredible writer, and she really captured, and also the idea that I am an equal advocate for male identifying and female, which sadly is rare. So I did start a book, and then COVID hit, and the need.
But you're going to get back to it. I'm
getting back to it. Yeah. I'm going to get back to it.
You are for sure, Charis. A friend of mine is a professor at Loyola University here in Chicago, and she's been doing this for decades. And she teaches freshmen, which she loves, incoming freshmen. They're so young. And then she also teaches seniors too. And seeing that evolution is really amazing. One of the things she shared was that the gender roles have completely shifted. These incoming freshmen through seniors today are very much open to all kinds, it's not just the mom takes care of the kids and the dad goes to work, right? No, they are very open to the dad taking care of the kids and the mom going to work in these heteronormative type situations. And I think that that is so amazing today. They're moving away, they're evolving away from these very specific roles, which is another reason that we started LUWI, to be able to eliminate that making women be in this role of having to rely on another, having to outsource their health and well-being. And I wonder, as you're advocating for both women and men, what do you see that same thing younger years, where this gender role is not what it used to be for these Gen Zs?
I do. And I feel like I feel like there's a pushback. So I'm really curious how this goes. So yeah, I am seeing a lot of people naming it, and I'm curious what they're going to do with, there's this permissive culture lately to be more sexist, racist, like all kinds of, so I'm curious how that's going to play out, but I am excited because the trope of like the young movie that I used to use in my curriculum, 15 years ago, where I would ask even fifth graders, the movie where the man, there's always it's always heteronormative, a man or a man and a girl, or it's always man, girl also, are running away from some bad guys, like in a jungle, like, natives or like aliens on some, those late movies at 3 a.m. And they're about to get away from they're both facing this terrifying thing. They're about to get away and somebody trips. Who's going to trip? All the kids say, oh, the girl always trips and she falls down. And I mean, fifth graders know this, right? So what we do is I'm like, okay, so why are we not pulling out the same way as an English teacher? Why aren't we giving young people spaces to reflect, revise, redraft, analyze the messages they're getting? So she falls down, and then immediately what happens? And they know the whole, but now finally, I mean, Pixar's done a great job. Lots of places are changing that narrative, but she'll fall down, and then immediately, for some reason, she now is like bowing over. Usually it's her ankle, because the spiked heels that she was running through the jungle. She like tripped on a vine.
Yeah.
And she's like leaning, and she's going, and she's making this sound. And I ask, what's the sound? Even fifth grade, I get a whole auditorium of kids going, and
Yeah. No, that's like
so,
Reese Witherspoon. She was on that Instagram,
yes,
and
but
she said,
"What do we do now?"
What do we do now? Oh,
Right.
what do we
And
do
so
now?
that's what I've been saying for
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
And then the short version of this whole thing, because I get pretty passionate about it, is that now the boy, what we need to see is that both people are objectified. Like, she's like, no, go on without me. Like, that's the only word she can form, is to sacrifice herself. And she's like, where do we go? And he says, it's this way. Well, neither of them been in this jungle or this alien planet. Like, no one knows where to go, but he has to pretend where to go. And then she can't walk or speak, apparently, at this point.
But it's bad for both, because I'm raising two Gen Zs, one of each, right? And neither knows.
And why
Right?
can't they
No.
be acknowledged for that?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he has to
exactly.
pick her
It's
up and
okay.
carry her, right? And then, and the best case scenario is that later she rewards him for gratuitous sex for saving him, and she makes the same sound that she made before. Like,
Oh shit.
it just takes all of her power away, and none of them like it. So when your question is that Gen Z is pushing back on that, they find that ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they're now being handed the next 4 years a challenge. Are they going to push back on the messages we're getting in our culture that are, I think, moving us backwards to who's the object and who's the subject? But I think LUWI's pushing back on that.
Maris, you got a hand up.
I do. I just would love to add to that. Like, I can think of 2 scenarios specifically. And first of all, the Reese Witherspoon thing came up for me too. And I would love to share that out with everyone here and include that in our recording, because it's such an important note. And
I've been saying it forever. Why is it now coming up? I can't believe how long it takes for people to bring this up.
Well, thank you for having planted that seed all over. And hopefully now this is just amplifying, that wisdom. But I can think of 2 clear memories where I was international and we were in a group and turned around. And one time was in Italy, and my father said, it's this way. And we and I was pushing back saying, no, it's this way. And followed my dad, God love him, my best friend, all the things, love him, but he was wrong. Then 20 years later, I was with a group of friends in Japan and we had to make our way back. And a guy in the group said, it's this way. And everyone followed him. And not only was I right to begin with, but once we got lost, I also corrected on what he had done. And I'm not saying, I mean, my nickname in my family is Magellan. I'm not saying that I have like a skill, even though I kind of do. But I will say women in particular have this ability. This is one example of how and where women's gut feelings live in the right, because we are on the defense in a lot of positions. And I think having the ability to not only feel safe, seen, and significant within others, but to listen to your own gut and look at your leg and say, that's mine. Or look at your surroundings and say, no, I clocked this. I know exactly where I am. It's unfortunate that through I don't know, maybe it's evolution or societal norms that we've had to build up this skill, but why not leverage that skill in every scenario possible, not just in fight or flight, or like Nora said, when our heart is racing.
Beautifully said. It's so beautifully said.
Yeah, that's great, Maris. I love it. Well, safe, seen, and significant is what we're going to take away from today, I think, right? Among other things, and how we can help those. I mean, I would say not just our teens or our Gen Zs, but or Gen Alphas, like Nora's got a Gen Alpha, but everybody in our life, right? I mean, isn't that ultimately the goal, to help those we care about to feel safe and seen and significant in our life?
Yeah. And compassionately define what that is like for each one of them. You know, it's connection, recognition, and power. It's what we all want, but we're in a culture that makes it really hard. So how can we show up for each other? And I encourage everybody that is willing, that listens to webinars like this, to create community. And you know, and I'm happy to help you create community wherever you are, of setting up groups for you, or we could do Zooms, or I just feel so passionately that the power of this, the amount of people I hear from, former students of mine who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s now, that talk about the power of learning this language. It really can change. It's a game changer. And when
For all decisions they may make.
All of them. And so that's why I feel passionately about representing you, Lisa, is that there just need to be more examples of where more people are seen, and that more narratives are created for agency and creating change. And it's hard out there, but it also, God, it can be so. I get to hear from many
it's so
people
obvious
who are
sometimes
psyched
too
about how things are going. So it's not all bad.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's moving in the right direction. I think we're doing our part, and
We are.
we're going to get there. So
Yeah.
Thanks, Charis.
Of course.
Thank you guys
Thanks,
so
Team
much.
LUWI. Thanks,
As
Nora,
we-
and everybody for joining us. Appreciate you guys. Go, Sam.
I was just going to say, as we get to the top of the hour, any last words before we wrap up?
What are your last words, Sam? Your face just disappeared. Oh, there you are.
No,
There you are.
my well, I mean, I don't even have last words, because I was about to start that off with, we could go for another 2 hours and need to start our own podcast, and
Yeah, I know.
could
It'd
just
be great.
keep chatting and
Yeah.
chatting and chatting, but I am determined to do what it takes to get you to get that book done.
Yeah, Sam will be a good, set you
really-
up for
yeah.
success. We want to set everybody up for success, right? That's why we're
We
doing
do.
this work. And it's, so, all right. Awesome. Until next time, thanks everyone. Appreciate all of your support and and reach out if you have any more questions.
Absolutely reach out, because this is the dynamic group of people who are really creating change. So yeah, I'm here. We're all here. Please reach out.
Thanks, Charis. Thanks, Team LUWI. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.